Lena was the type of person who always kept her thoughts to herself, blending into the background no matter how hard she worked. At 25, she had a steady job at a growing company, but despite her skills and ideas, she often felt invisible. Every day, she showed up on time, did her best, and tried to contribute, but somehow, her efforts were overshadowed by others, especially by her boss, Mark, and her mentor, Julia. Mark, a figure of authority in the company, often took credit for the ideas she brought to meetings, and Julia, her supposed mentor, would gently push her to follow her lead rather than trust her instincts. Lena began to believe that maybe she wasn't meant to lead, that her ideas were never good enough. Her fear of confrontation made it even harder for her to speak up. Every time she saw someone else take credit for her work, a knot formed in her stomach. The longer this continued, the more Lena found herself questioning her worth. She saw others climb up the ladder while she remained stuck in the same position, doing all the hard work but never getting the recognition she deserved. She didn't want to upset anyone, especially Julia, who had been kind to her in the beginning, but she was slowly losing herself in the process. She would nod along in meetings when she knew she had a better solution, but saying nothing had become a habit, a shield to protect herself from conflict. One afternoon, things came to a head. Lena had worked tirelessly on a project proposal, staying late every night to make sure every detail was perfect. It was her chance to finally prove herself, to show everyone what she was capable of. But when the meeting arrived, it was Mark who presented the proposal. He didn't acknowledge Lena's hard work. Instead, he presented it as if it were his own idea. Lena's heart sank as she sat there, watching the proposal she had poured so much effort into, being claimed by someone else. Julia, seated beside her, gave her a supportive smile, but it felt patronizing. Lena's frustration bubbled up, but she bit her lip, afraid of causing any kind of disruption. As Mark spoke with confidence, Lena felt her voice growing quieter. She wanted to speak up. She wanted to say something, to let everyone know that it was her work, her ideas that had made the project a success. But the fear of being seen as difficult, the fear of ruining the moment, held her back. It was in that moment that Lena realized something painful: she had let others replace her. She had given up her power to others, letting them take the credit, letting them lead when she was the one who had worked so hard to be in charge. Her confidence had been replaced by self-doubt. The very things that had made her unique, her creativity, her vision, had been overshadowed by the voices and opinions of others. The realization hit her heart: if she didn't start standing up for herself, she would continue to fade into the background. This was more than just a career setback, it was a wake-up call. Lena had been letting others take control of her life, and in doing so, she had lost her own voice. The thought terrified her. Would she always be replaced by someone else's ideas, someone else's dreams? In that moment, Lena knew that she had to make a choice: either she continued letting others dictate her future, or she took control of her own path. The first step would be confronting her fear of speaking up, of owning her power. But could she do it? Could she step into the light and finally say, "This is me, and this is my voice"? The conflict between staying silent and finding her voice was the battle she now had to face, and she couldn't run away from it any longer. The turning point came unexpectedly. It was a Monday morning when Lena received a call from Julia, who invited her to discuss an upcoming project. As usual, Julia was kind, but Lena couldn't shake the feeling that she was being gently pushed into the background once again. The project had been her idea, her initiative, yet she knew deep down that Julia would end up leading it. This time, however, something inside Lena snapped. The frustration that had been quietly building up over months could no longer be ignored. When they met in the office, Julia began discussing the next steps for the project, just like she had always done. But this time, Lena couldn't stay silent. Her heart pounded in her chest as she took a deep breath and said, "I think we should change the approach." It wasn't much, but it was the beginning. Julia paused, clearly surprised by Lena's assertiveness. Lena continued, her voice trembling at first, but gaining strength with each word. "I've been thinking a lot about this project, and I believe there's a better way to execute it. I'd like to take the lead on this one, if you're okay with that." Julia's expression softened. She seemed unsure, but after a moment, she nodded. "I trust you, Lena. Let's see where your ideas take us." Lena left the meeting with a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. She had done it. For the first time, she had taken control of the situation and made her voice heard. But the real test came when the project meeting with Mark approached. This time, Mark would expect her to sit quietly in the background, letting him take the credit. But Lena knew she couldn't allow that to happen again. When the meeting started, Lena was ready. Mark began presenting the project as if it was still his idea, but this time, Lena raised her hand, a simple gesture that felt like a victory in itself. "Actually," she said, her voice steady and clear, "this is the approach I've developed with the team. We've made a few changes, and I believe it's a stronger direction." The room went silent for a moment, and then Mark looked at her, his face unreadable. For a second, Lena feared she had made a mistake. But then something unexpected happened. Mark acknowledged her. He didn't challenge her. Instead, he nodded and said, "All right, Lena. Let's hear it." Lena presented her ideas with confidence, watching as Mark and the rest of the team responded positively. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. She was no longer hiding behind the shadows of others. She was standing in the light, owning her contributions, and asserting her value. The team respected her more than ever before, and so did Mark. It wasn't just about the project anymore, it was about Lena reclaiming her power. When the meeting ended, Lena felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She knew that this was just the beginning of her transformation. She didn't have to let others replace her. She could own her voice, her ideas, and her worth. From that moment on, Lena embraced every opportunity to speak up, no matter how intimidating the situation.